666 and the Fibonacci spiral, Metatronic spiral interface. And I'm going to try to get some of those diagrams done for tomorrow. There's tons of diagrams that go with the new stuff that I'll never get done in time for this workshop. But this is the axis where we enter the tachyon cycle, the last T6, I call it tachyon cycle 6, where we would naturally end up with birth of the Edon and then being able to go in to where we go into what is called the Adashi cycle, which is after you hit 0 point and you go back in. First you hit the Eta Shai. You have the Eta Shai cycle to 0, then you go in and begins the Adashi cycle. The Adashi cycle from the Adore side is where you pick up the Adore keys. And when you're done with those keys, it allows the two spherical light body constructs from the Laetore and Adore sides to come together and shift, and they pull in, the flame pulls in and then rebirths out at axis 9 as this. Now on the first round, or the first starborn cycle set, it comes out as the inner seed atom, which is called the Unisci. All right? And the Unisci has with it the Rashala inner flame, this flame of the Sacred Heart. And you can see there's two little heart-shaped things there. And it's called the Sacred Heart Passage. And the Rashala flame. So that is the simple starborn cycle by which the core, starting with the Partakai, first Partakai, moves out into expansion to create the seed atom for the inner domains. Now you go through a couple layers of this to get to the point where you end up with the Shadi is the seed atom for the middle domains. So that would have middle domains connected to it. And then in the last set of tachyon 6 cycles, you would have the creation of the seed atom for the outer seed atom, and then the domains to go with that. So there's lots of layers to this. That means there's lots of key cycles, because every one of those shifts represents a tachyon cycle, which is a set of 12 harmonic key generation cycles. Okay, so when we got that context, now we'll look at those, what they are. Next one, please. What do I have here? Huh? What? Okay, that's just to show you the natural shape of the crystal spiral and how it emerges out from the expansions. Each one of those expansions, that's axis 1 expansion, axis 2 expansion, axis 3, wait a minute, no, axis 0, sorry, axis 0. Then energy comes out from axis 0 and then expands out with the Taran this size, axis 1, then axis 2 dyad, axis 3 myad, axis 4 monad, axis 5 amore, axis 6 Adon 144, axis 7 Edon 1728. So you see how this spiral forms with the specific proportions, of quantum expansion that occur through the encryption. These Pythagoras represent the encryption held within the light body, the light cell clusters of the starborn cycle. Next one, please. So that is the outgoing clockwise spiral of expansion. And after that gets all the way up to there and finishes one set of the tachyon 6 cycle, then frequencies come back in here and we pick up these keys and we start this spiral where we expand through the light body cells on the other side, starting small again. Again, this is 0 axis, but this would be 1 counterclockwise, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and back to 8 again. So then we pick up this set of keys, and then when they come together, next one, please, we end up with the flame cycle. This is the whole set of the movements of the flame cycle. We don't have to go through all this, but just know we end up with the flame on this axis after we complete the clockwise cycle of expansion, and then go back to core, and then come out with what's called the Adashi cycle, which is the counterclockwise one to pick up the Adore keys. When they meet, it forms the flame of Rashala, the inner, and the flame of Rashala, the outer flames. And rebirths, then does a shift up to what was axis 1 and rebirths out as the seed atom for the next level out. Next one, please. When we put together all of those we put together all of those light cell clusters, starting with the Taran at the center, and do it proportionally according to the Cathara grid expansions and the size and the configuration of each of the cell configurations. Remember how you had like the Taran had the 3 particuli, the next one, the dyad had 6, the myad had 12, etc. When you put their proper configurations of light cell form in there, you put them all together on their proper axis. By the time you get to the unici at axis 9, this is what this clustering looks like. It's called the inner one, the one that corresponds with the unici, is called the Rosetta, Reuzehettata, I believe. When you get to the one that corresponds with the middle seed atom, it is the Rosetta, Rhossetta, I believe. And when you get to the outer one, I believe it is the Rosetta, Rossetta. I have to get the spellings on them, but it means the same, the Rosetta. The Rosetta code is the code, the Starborn code. It is the code of natural eternal life, first creation and perpetual motion creation. So what we did in the Phoenix Workshop, last Phoenix Workshop, was activate the Rosetta code in the Shadi in order to begin bringing the Rosetta code, the natural code for all of the Edon cycles, into the Rushite spiral, so it can begin clearing and healing the messed up Rosetta codes that are in the seed atom on the outer level. So that's what we have done so far. So this is the Rosetta code, and that is the unici. That would be the unici level. And of course, in the center here, you do have your flames happening, but if I put that on top of that, you wouldn't see much of this anymore. Next one, please. There, that's to show you. I got rid of the lines that show the alignment lines. I just show you the Rosetta with the flame, where the flame emerges in the Rosetta, and where the seed atom would be. This configuration applies to each level of the domains, where you have this one we were dealing with, the Rosetta one, that's the inner seed atom, and the core starborn cycle. You would have the same if you looked at the Shadi middle seed atom. It would have the inner starborn cycle, probably. I'm still trying to put how many cycles are together and which one comes at the end of which. But you end up with 4 of these, or 3 of these, actually, because the core cycle doesn't have a Rosetta. The core cycle creates the first Rosetta. So I believe we have probably 3 Rosettas. Yeah, I'm getting some of the math for tomorrow in my head on this. Anyway, know we have the Rosetta. Know when you have your Shadi, it has this, this is the configuration of the Shadi seed atom all the way down to the first Taran light seed and the first partikey within the first Taran and the triad within that. All right, next one, please. Now, we're going to look at tachyon cycles as quickly as possible, but enough so you can understand where elemental command is fitting in. Now, this is taking you back to that axis 1, the first Taran light cluster, the light seed that was formed from the first phasing of the triad that was on axis 0. It bursts out as the Taran. The Taran simply has, I won't get into the names of each of the units. I mean, really, well, they're called the 3 Ina. This is why, and this area is the partikey. So, this area is the partikey, and it's referred to as the Ka. These are the 3 Ina of the Ka, the 3 Enoch. Ka, and this is the key generation unit. So you got the keys of Enoch Ka, and that's what that text is supposed to be about and isn't. So it's about generation of the keys. Yes, we've got instead the keys of Enoka happening. E-N-O-K-A or C-H-E. Right. Anyway. This is where it all starts from the first spark cluster. It's the first cluster, cell cluster, partikey cluster, formed for the phasing of the first 2 partikey. And in here, there are all sorts of gelasic states, gelasic ether vapor states that we'll look at in a minute. At the core of the partikey is the creation point, the original creation point, the partikey 1 and 2, emerged from. So in there, you would also have the triad would be in there doing its phasing. And through the one point that keeps changing from Partakai 1 to Partakai 2 to Partakai 1 to Partakai 2, that in the center of that would be the creation point door. Now, in the center, around all of that, and around the triad, at the center of the Partakai, in the center of the Taran, you have something called the diamond door, or the Nada, or crystal. It is the diamond door of first creation. And opening the diamond door through certain dynamics is what allows backflow to go back to source. It's what allows ascension currents to take collectives of consciousness back to source. And then it also allows the rebirth of things to come back out. So that is the diamond door of first creation. It's inside. Every Partakai has one. Every Taran has Partakai. Every Partakai has a diamond door. And they all connect to the first diamond door that is of the first Partakai of first creation, that is the cosmic level. All right, next one, please. I'm going to have to sit down for a minute. Here we go again. Here we go again. Ow. Okay, now, inside the Partakai, remember here we are again, the Taran. This inner one here is the Partakai. Inside the Partakai, they're considered the 9 inner proto-gelesic layers of the Partakai. They are called the Iyuka, or the yoke. Then there are 6 outer photogelesic layers of the Partakai. 3 of them were actually, layers 10, 11, and 12, are actually still inside the Partakai, and the 13, 14, and 15 are just outside surrounding. That's supposed to be surrounding the Partakai. So the surrounding would be here, and the Partakai is here. So there are 9 inner gelesic layers, and then 10, 11, and 12 layers. Each of these gelesic layers has a different state. They go in sets of 3. You have the Atma, which is the inner yoke, the Etha, which is the middle yoke, the Ketha, which is the outer yoke, and then you have the Lojaya, and this is where you get, I believe, the lotus and the words lotus and the logi and those kind of things that refer to God and things come from that word. Okay, and this is within the Partakai. And then there's the Lotaya, which is the outer layer surrounding the Partakai. Next one, please. Okay, that's just showing you the expansion of the circles, the layers within the Partakai. They are built upon that expansion cycle. So they replicate that same size expansion built upon the Cathara encryptions that you saw in the Starborn cycle. All right, but remember, this is still inside the first unit of the Starborn cycle, which is the Taran. That's the center unit of the Taran, the Partakai. And these are the gelesic layers that expand on the same diameters within the Partakai. So they're the 9 inner ones, and then 10, 11, and 12 are still on the inside, but they're considered the outer inside. And then you have 13, 14, 15, which you don't see here, that are beyond, around the Partakai. So there are names to each of these layers, and we'll look at those quickly on a different chart, a smaller chart that shows a bunch of things together. I'm not going to go into the specific states, but they each have a specific state of gel. They're all built on the core of the ethers is a set of 3 units called they're called Eta units, and they are the Sa, the La, and the Ka. Eventually, they form the silica, which is the core of silica-based eternal life forms. All right, so it all starts there. They all have these 9 layers inside of the Nada Or, which is that first layer, that first little layer. It's layer 1. It's the creation point Nada Or, the diamond door crystal, right? Inside that crystal, there is the Sa, the La, and the Ka as a phase set of Eta Ors, or ethers. And it is from there that that the rest of the gelesic layers have actually formed through all there's a whole set of complex dynamics that I haven't even translated yet. They just showed me, and I kind of went, oh my God, it'll take me a year. Inside, before we get to the birth of the Taran, when the Taran is in the process of birthing, there's a whole bunch of things that take place inside of Source that have to do with the formation of the ethers, or the Eta Ors, and it's called the dance of the ethers. And by the end of that, that core unit forms. And once we go through the replications and the parta-key comes out in the first cluster or any other parta-key thereafter, so every cluster has sets of parta-key that expand out with whatever their cluster of parta-key is, the parta-key will always hold this inner structure of Delezic states. And it starts with the nada ore that holds the first three sa, la, ka, eta ore crystals. All right? So this actually gives you, what later will give you the states of matter. These are the interior states of matter, or what become matter. And I'll show you how it becomes matter in a little bit, because it has to do with tachyon cycles and key generation. It is inside of the parta-key units that the light units that crystallize to form what we know as subatomic particles and then build up to form elements and compounds and things form. And it all starts inside of the parta-key. And just remember, every phase, the parta-key is part of the taran, the one we're looking at here, but every time you have a fulfillment of a tachyon cycle and a rebirth of the original one and a replication of a × 2, say, for the dyad, that means you'd have two, the dyad would have two parta-key, right, because it's a × 2 replication. So it'd have instead of three parta-key and a parta-key, it would have 6 parta-key and 2 parta-key. So you get more parta-key as well as parta-key for each expansion layer when you go through the 6 tachyon cycles. All right. So I just wanted to see the Delezic layers. They all have very specific things like names, like we have carbogel, protogel, neurogel, cryogel, crystogel, ectogel, hydrogel, magnogel, and thermogel. All right? These have to do with the specific qualities. There's another list that goes into detail that I won't bother reading right now, but it lists what each one of those are, what type of ether vapor. Some of them are solid, some of them are semi-solid, some of them are liquid, some of them are completely gas vapor, some of them are hot, some of them are cool. So this is where you get the core of where the states of matter are formed, is inside of the parta-key units. Next one, please. Yeah, I don't need this one. I did that one enough already. Okay, which one? This one? No. Wait. I want to see. I just want to see if I think I want them. Yeah, I'm going to just let them see that this one exists. What's this one? Yeah, this one I can leave. This one I will put up. Yeah, just for a minute. Because I have a version of that graph that I've added the new stuff to, so it'll be good if they see that one. Whoops. If you take all of the little alignment lines off of that and look at just the parta-key itself, you can see the layers more clearly. Okay, so you have the 9 inner layers. Those 9 inner layers are, starting with the ka, moving inward. You have the ka, the ma, the ta, are the first 3. Moving inward. Then you have the Jada, the Ida, and the Tao. And then you have the Jafa, the Adama, and the Nada-or. They're each a different state of ether vapor gels, okay, in different forms. So the Atma, the Etha, and the Ketha is what they form. The Atma would be the small set in the middle, then the Etha, and then the Ketha. Then out here, there's another chart that has the outer layers too. Is that one? Yep, that's why I had that one there. And no, it isn't that one. Where's the one we didn't use? Where's the one we didn't use? That's all right. We'll see them in a minute. I have it on one of the new ones I did anyway. Okay. I think we can go into tachyons now. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, we'll go to tachyons now. Getting there. Don't need that one. Don't need that one, no. I've already talked about the contraction and expansion of the taran causing sparks. Right. Okay. Now, if you remember the taran unit is shown small here, right? That's the parta-key. This is just showing the parta-key, what's happening in the parta-key. This is where we get into harmonic key generation cycles within the parta-key. All right. And remember, we had the Delezic states, the 9 inner Delezic states, and there's actually 6 outer Delezic states as well. And we'll get to those in a little bit. So this is the parta key shown small, and this is an enlargement of its center, so you can see what's going on in there. This configuration is when the parta key is expanded and not sparking. When it contracts, it shrinks and goes from its diameter that was that big, and it pulls itself in like that. And that's when it sparks, and that's when the three partaci that are on the outside pull into the three partaci that are on the outside pull into the parta key, and as they run through those gelesic states, they create sparks. And then as they expand back out, the parta key expand back out, but the sparks stay inside the parta key. And each pulse of the parta key creates a set of 12 sparks. Half of them will have a negative electrical charge, and the other half have a positive electrical charge. So these sparks are called Kilana sparks, and the Kilana sparks link together through electromagnetic force that's generated through this sparking process. They link together to form what are, in sets of three, to form what are called kilons. Remember, we talked about kilons ages and ages ago. Groups of three kilons form. The sparks form after one. There would be 12 sparks. Now you see a lot of sparks here. There would only be 12 sparks, one set of 12 sparks for one pulse. Well, the Tarn pulses 12 times, and it creates a set of 144 sparks. Half of them positive charge, half of them negative charge. And they create, by linking together with electromagnetic force, they create a series of kilons. All right, those kilons form a crystal lattice through the entire center of the parta key. And that's the first phase of a harmonic key cycle is the Kilana spark generation. The kilons form what we had talked about were fire letters. So the Keylontic letters, the Keylontic lattice forms the fire letter sequences that we've talked about ages ago in relation to DNA templates and fire letters and those kind of things. And they build up, the kilons build up and to form kilon codes, fire letter sequences, and the entire Keylontic lattice. So this happens as the partachi is doing its first 12 pulses and making its sparks. And the sparks are linking together to form kilons, and kilons are linking together to form kilon codes, and kilon codes are linking together to form fire letter sequences and all of that. These are all encryptions, remember. These are little tiny points. These little sparks are little tiny points of gelesic radiation that have been generated in addition to the quantum that was already given from the first quantums given by source in the partachi 1 and partachi 2. These are being generated by the movement of the partachi through the parta key. So the parta key is a generator unit. Next one. I feel like I'm 900 years old right now at these activations. Ow. Ouch. Takes me a while, but I get there. All right. We're really getting close to the end now, I think, before we all fall asleep in our chairs or on our feet. Okay, now, out of those sparks, out of those sets, oh, that's all right. Out of those sets of 144 sparks that were generated by 12 pulses of the Tarn in the parta key, the harmonic key assembly begins. I'm not going to read through every one of these stages, but it is there for people who haven't read this stuff yet. We will have these eventually out for, like, in published form, but right now they're just on graphs because we're still filling in bits. They're still not all typeset. And there's more now that they're giving me, so I don't know when we're going to have them available. But this stuff has been read in certain workshops, like, read clearly like off the big type. So it's just giving you the process by which those sparks convert into 144 sparks, pull into sets 12, and form a set of 12 harmonic keys. 6 sparks form an overtone key, and 6 sparks form a bass tone key. And the set of overtone and bass tone creates what is called a harmonic key. But right now, the overtone keys and the overtone sparks, which would be positive charge sparks, have each a quantum of 33 1/3 positive Manet energy, and the bass tone ones have a quantum of 11 2/3 negative charge Ire energy. So the keys now that they are formed, they are a bit unbalanced in their quantum. In order to go into storage while more keys are generated, they have to go through something called quantum resolution. Okay, next one, please. So these are just the stages to get to there. And they're long. The text is long. It takes 20 minutes to read that text. Now, next stage is harmonic key resolution. So remember, you started out with 140 Taran pulse 12 times, created 12 sets of 12, 144 sparks. Those 12 sparks accreted, or pulled together into sets of 12 harmonic keys with six sparks forming a bass tone and 6 sparks forming an overtone. Now we are at key resolution. This is complicated, but not that hard. All right, key resolution is what happens when you have your 12 harmonic keys that we had over on the other side, right, that looked like this, right? And you had your bass tone keys and your overtone keys, and your overtone keys were, each of those sparks was 33 1/3 quantum positive Manet, so that's 33 1/3 times 6, and this was 11 2/3 negative charge Ire times 6. All right, the 6 and 6. Now, these keys redistribute their quantum in order to go into storage through which they can build up and become crystalline. They first, here we go, they break down into, thank you, the overtone key. Each one of the sparks from the overtone key gives a portion of its quantum down into the bass tone key. Now, the portion of the quantum is the differential between the two. If these sparks, these 6 sparks in the bass tone, each have 11 2/3 quantum, the overtone gives an equal quantum to them. So the overtone loses 11 2/3 of its positive electrical energy, which bonds down into the bass tone. What is left is 6 sparks of the overtone with 21 2/3 quantum energy. This is called the overtone differential, which is the difference between the 33 1/3 that was the original overtone and the 11 2/3 that was given to the bass tone. Right, so it's a differential. The differential key is called the Kasha key, and it is in what is called the Ka layer. The Ka layer is level 9, right, of the Gelesic states, and that would be level 9 here. Ka is thermogelesic field of hot, glowing Ketha vapor gas gel, right? All right, so it's in a specific band of the inner layers of the Gelesic layers inside the parta key. All right, that is the Kasha key. And it's actually called, it's really the Ka key, but that sounded funny. So they said I could call it the Kasha key because it's the carrier of the Kasha. Later, and very soon, we'll find out what is the Kasha, because it has to do with the Adore side. All right? So the Kasha key has a set of 6 sparks, and when it goes through key resolution to form the differential key, there's still 6 sparks, but you have one surrounded by 5, and this is where you get the pentagram shape thing, and it's supposed to be surrounded by a circle and with its top up. Okay, there's a bunch of charts that I don't know if I'll ever get a chance to do them, but it's showing what happens with these when the Metatronic code is involved, and I'm hoping to get to those, but they probably won't be this workshop. I'll be lucky if I get through the rest of the series that comes after these that are the new ones. But anyway, this is natural Kasha key. Now what happens down here is you had the 6 sparks of 11 2/3 negative Ire that form the bass tone. Well, that amount, it's called the equilibrium amount of Ka that was given to the bass tone. This is called the, we're referring to them loosely as the joule, because they're what form the joules later. All right, they are, I believe, what do they call them? The Ja or the Jala. All right, so the words are just like the jelly, but it is like the Jala, which these collect later, and as keys do other things, to become what are the joules that are the elements of stored electrical potential that form the calories in the body. when you burn something, for instance, it releases, when you burn a substance, it releases the joules. Those joules release in the form of heat that would raise the temperature of water, whatever it is, 1 degree, whatever, Celsius. All right, all of these joules are the beginning point of the joules that they use in scientific measure here to measure heat and work produced when a substance is burned. It is also directly connected to what we consider calories here. All right, so calories and joules here in science go hand in hand, and this is where they start. I have the translations of that, and if I wasn't so tired, I'd probably be able to tell you right off the top of my head, because I used to have that one, but that was like 4 workshops ago. And I have to delete workshops now to be ready for the next one, because there's so much data to remember. All right, but it's on tape somewhere, the explanation of all of the joules and the calories. Anyway, because it's all number stuff, you know, where you got X amount of calories equals, has X amount of joules and that kind of thing. But there is a substance that is stored inside atoms, and that is the Jaurels that are formed here. They start with harmonic key, the harmonic key resolution. The joules are the product of harmonic key resolution and the forming of the overtone differential. They are the equilibrium key that are equal to the bass tone, and they bond to the bass tone shield. So what was 6 sparks of the bass tone shield now becomes 6 positive joule sparks and 6 negative bass tone sparks. That together forms the overtone joule and the bass tone 6, form the crystal key, 1 crystal key. That is in the Ma layer, okay? 9 was the Ka layer, 8 is the Ma layer. The Ma layer is magnogelizic field of warm, moist, liquid, silica, vapor, gas, gel. All right, so you've got the Kasha key in the Ka, and you've got the crystal key that has the bass tone and the joule in the Ma. All right, that is all of these keys go through this at one time. So what were the 12 of these turn into the 12 of these. So now you have the Kasha keys and the crystal keys. That is key resolution, where they balance out their quantum so they can do the next thing. Now, here's where it gets weird, because we did jump. There's going to be something I'm going to show you at the end of these. I'm going to show you right here is where there's a series of other things that happen before we get to where we're going now, but I'm going to show you where we're going. That was the sequence we showed before. And then we'll come back to, remember this one, when key resolution happened, now this next thing happens, okay? So let's just follow with that. I think I have them in that order. If that made any sense, that statement. That statement makes sense. Yeah, okay. So now, that was the formation of one harmonic key cycle, where we went through the spark generation, the harmonic key, bass tone, and overtone key assembly or formation, and then the key resolution. Now, there are a couple of other stages that happen that we'll go back and look at before we get to here, but that would be one harmonic key cycle that would end with a tachyon cycle, all right, where after a set, actually a tachyon cycle would be the end of a set of 12 of what you just saw, okay? So one harmonic key cycle creates the Kasha keys and the crystal keys, and then they go through several other stages and go into storage. And then another key cycle starts. After 12 key cycles, you would have your tachyon cycle. So one tachyon cycle is actually 12 key cycles. Now, in the 12 key cycles, each key cycle generates 12 keys. So if you have 12 key cycles, you've generated 144 keys. Those 144 keys group together in sets of 12 and pull into what's called the Ta layer. And they create what's called a hydrogen bond in the Ta layer, because the Ta layer is hydrogelizic field of warm, dry, liquid, vapor, gas, gel. That's where hydrogen comes from, a combination of that and the Ja field. All right, but anyway, we end up with a hydrogen bond in the center of each set of 12 keys. So you have 12 keys times 12 are 144 keys, form a set of 12 tachyons. They're chyons, but they're in the Ta layer, so they're tachyons. All right, those tachyons occur after a set of 12 harmonic key generations. All right, next one, please. Which one is that? Right. I'm not going to go through all this text because it'll take forever. But what it's saying, after you have your sets of tachyons generated, there are certain dynamics that take place between sparking and interactions and vibration, creating oscillation, creating sparking phenomena. There's something called a piezoelectric effect that takes place between the core, the nada ore, and these tachyons that have built. And at a certain point, a flash point is reached. At the flash point, through a very complex process that is technically spoken out that I'm not going to read here, we've been reading this bit since Easter 2006 Phoenix, I believe we've been talking about this, so I'm not going to read all that right now. But what happens is those tachyons fire. The harmonic keys fire or turn on. They activate. The keys activate, the tachyons activate. They turn into what's called a tachyon field, which is a superluminal field. They pull. What they actually do when you're talking about these in relation to matter structures, they actually pull the matter structure into a superluminal state where it's faster than the speed of light, so it's invisible to anything that's not, right? But in terms of inside of the part of key, which is where we are, the tachyons activate because their keys activate. They come together, they hit flash point, and the diamond door opens, and they pull in fully into core, completely disappear, go back to source, and replicate. That's where key replication occurs. And this is where it gets interesting. We already knew that at the end of a tachyon cycle, which is the flash point, the next is the birth cycle of the next times whatever cluster, and a rebirth of the original one. The original one comes back on its original axis, whatever that cluster was, and then the replicated quantum, which is like times 2, times 2, times 2, and then eventually the quantum gets bigger as far as replication comes back. What we didn't know about before that's really cool is, okay, once you get on to number 2, say your Taran phase as it goes through its full tachyon cycle, generates all its keys, and does its flash point, and then bursts the dyad. Then our attention has been going like, okay, and then the dyad does. What does the Taran do once the dyad goes into its key generation cycle? This is where it gets really cool and really complex as well. And as far as diagrams go, it'll take me a million years. But there's something that happens with when the reborn unit, which is the one that was already there, that flashed off and then came back on, its keys also get replicated. So the original keys gave it the thrust to go through, right? But that thrust went through with it. So the keys get replicated, and they come back in the center of the partikey of the rebirthed one as a set of fire crystals, aurora fire crystals. All right, so these crystals are additional quantum that are stored inside a unit. After it had done its keys, done its tachyon cycle, went into source, came back out again with its keys in what are called opalized form. They're like they're called fire crystal keys. Now they're inside the partikey, but in a very specific configuration, which I'll show you in a little bit. But I want to first get a little bit back step to before we hit tachyons. We're still at the end of, let's say, a 1 harmonic key cycle. Remember, there are 12 in a tachyon cycle. So we hit key resolution of 1 harmonic key cycle. There's another graph. There's another graph of the new ones here somewhere. Yeah, we'll save this one for a bit later. I might pop that back up. Yeah, these are the new ones. Now, these are the beginning of the new set of graphs that go in between some of those. These are going to take me ages. They're really complex. I've only got part of this done, but it's enough to give you the idea of where this is going. Now, after a key resolution of 1 cycle, right? This is before, so we backtracked, right? We're back to harmonic key cycle 1. It went through its spark phase, it went through its harmonic key bass tone overtone phase, and it went through its key resolution phase, where it has a set of 12 kasha keys and a set of 12 crystal keys. So the crystal keys are the bass tone keys plus a joule of equilibrium joule. All right, we'll start there. Now, I haven't even got these drawn yet, but I wanted to show you this part so you have a little bit of idea of what keys can do. Now these are still in the configuration of what was the bass tone and overtone before resolution. That's just because I didn't get the drawing done yet. I got these bits drawn to try to show myself and explain what was that they did each stage. Each of these stages is hard, and it's hard to draw all of this quickly, especially it's like, yeah, great, you could have given me 2 weeks on this set of diagrams. I might have had them done. But here was the one harmonic key before its resolution, right? Bass tone and overtone, 6 sparks each. These are 33 and third quantum. These are 11 and 2/3 quantum. Resolution takes place. You end up with the Kasha key that has 6 sparks of 21 and 2/3 quantum. And you have a crystal key that has a jewel that are, they call them at this point jalas. Later they build up to become ja-orels, and then they build up to become jewels. All right, so there's a building up process. But this process that we're going into now is called harmonic key ordination. Now, I'm sure ordination that we do is similar, but ordination, spelled with a D-E-N, refers to densify, okay? So, or refers to a process called the adoration of the keys. Now, oration of the keys would mean the keys that are in gelesic states undergo a transformation in which they turn into light, units of light, all right? So, oration of the keys means what were the gelesic keys turn into light. Now, adoration of the keys is actually the full, is what makes oration occur. Adoration is each one of these keys, and you have a set of 12 sparks here, right, and a set of 6 sparks here in the Kasha. This is just showing you the Kasha and the crystal here. That's just explaining the Kasha there. So ignore that set. And let's look at this one. Kasha key has 6 sparks of Ettore Ka. It's the Ettore side, right? This is the crystal key, has 12 sparks of what's called Ettore Ma layer. Okay, part of its Ire, part of its Ka, which is the Jala. Okay. Now, each of these pull up the force of the vibration and oscillation of those sparks creates an interaction in the center that pulls up from the Ettore side 1 spark each. So the jewel that is positive on the Ettore side, pulls up a negative charged Adore spark, and that is called the Shama. And the bass tone, which is negative on the Ettore side, like negative charge, pulls up a Adore spark that from the other side of that plate, right? We have a Ettore and Adore. Pulls up an Adore spark that is positive charged. Is called the Shema. Okay, so here's where you have the adoration of the keys. The Adores are being added to the keys, right? The oration, the Adore light is being brought into the keys. All right, so you have the bass tone picks up a negative bass tone picks up a positive Shema tone, and it becomes what is called a Shala unit. The part of the crystal key that is the jewel, which is a positive charge over here, pulls up the Shama and becomes a Jala. Yeah, a Jala. And what happens to the key structure is, and this, by the way, the Kasha key is positive over here. And the Pa is really the Ka key, but the Kasha is pulled up. The Kasha is the negative Adore Ka that comes up around the Kasha key. So this one gets it around the key, the Kasha, and the crystal key gets it through the center. It gets 2 sparks. So now you have a cluster of 12 plus 2, which is 14, and you have 6 sparks plus 1, which is 7. When the Adore when the 2 Adore units come up through, spark units come up through the center of the crystal key, it causes polarization of the crystal key. Yet these sparks, the Adore sparks, draw toward each other. They draw the Kasha key down, and they draw the crystal key down through the Ka layer. They draw the crystal key upward, and they lock in to what's called Triveka configuration, which is the natural configuration of living light that's able to phase. And they draw in to a point centered on the space between the Ka and the Ma. All right? This becomes an or line or an orbit. Now we'll look at the orbit soon, but you have the Ka-Ma layers, right? Ka, Ma. Ka is layer 9, Ma is layer 8. This band between them becomes an orbit for ors, or light units. Okay? So on the Ka-Ma level, right there, the crystal key polarizes and links to the Kasha key that dropped down a bit, forms a phase unit. This phase unit that has 3 ors, you have, all right, the Shala, this was the Shala, becomes the Shala or, and later they become Shalors, right, when they build quantum. The Jewel, which was the Jala, becomes the Jala or, and the Kasha becomes the Kala or. So the Las become the Laors at this point. Now, an or, by the way, is a 12th of an okay, which is a larger light unit. Now, this 3 cluster, you have 3 ors. You have the Shala or, the Jala or, and the Kala or, and 3 is, stuck together as a phase unit. That is called an ore, O-R-A, with the long A sound, an ore. The ore, now remember there are 12 keys, and each key turns into an ore. So when I get the drawing done, what you'll see is these will all go away, and on this Ka-Ma line, you'll see the 12 ore. The ore, at this stage of oration and densification, right, which is ordination, the ore all form at the same time. They go through this, each key goes through this at the same time. And then, when the ore forms, they phase spark, which means they phase, come together, spark. They form a backflow spark that goes back to source, which at this point, the source is the Ka-Ma line. So it actually goes back and over into the Adore side. And then the Adore side sends another spark back out, a backflow return spark. And that spark has at its center, because remember, these had things at their cores now, too. Remember, you had the positive Shema and the negative Shama. Later, they form, in another stage, they form what's called the Shamaun, or the shaman, right? This is where these words come from. What the spark does, the backflow return spark, has, because of these cores, it has what's called a Ja or L in it, all right, in the center. And the unit itself, the backflow return spark unit, comes out, and see, this is still in the Ma layer, this part here, but it comes out and drops down to the space between the Ma layer and the Ta layer, or the line between the Ma and the Ta, which is called the Mata band. All right, so you have 8. You have the Ma and the Ta. When this phases, when the ore phases and creates its Mata or with its Ja or L, later becoming Mator crystal with its jewel, right, after they build up. Those sparks will end up, and you'll see them eventually in the drawings, on the Mata band here. So there'll be a set of 12 Mata or with Ja or L on the Mata band. You still have your set of 12 ores on the Ka-Ma band. Now, that is oration, or the adoration of the keys. The next stage is, and meanwhile, the key generation cycle is actually starting for the harmonic 2 key cycle, the harmonic key cycle number 2. This is happening with number 1 keys, right? While number 2 is entering its spark phase. where it starts to do its 12 pulses. And the spark phase 12 pulses from the number 2 key generation happening create reciprocal 12 pulses of the ORAs from the cycle 1 keys. All right, that creates 12 layers of mata ors, right? 12, not 12. It doesn't make more keys, but the same ORAs pulse 12 times and create 12 sparks, and then backflow return sparks, which create 12 layers of the mata ors. And at some point, I don't even have the diagrams done from this point at all, but those 12 mata ors go through the next stage, and they bond and become the mata ors. No, 12 ors equal an So they build up density. That's why it's called densification. That part's called densification of the keys when they go through their pulsing. And then there's a whole other series of things. I think I made the list, but it's going to take me ages to get these done. There's like 9 other phases or something. But let me show you the list. That was an example of we went through one harmonic key cycle up to where it resolved and then went into ordination. And right at that ordination point, that's when the next cycle's starting. So you're trying to keep track of all these cycles happening at once, and there's 12 of them. It's enough to make you nuts when you're looking at that, trying to draw these diagrams. Next one now, please. But this is just a list of what the key progression is in a tachyon cycle, right? Tachyon cycle. The 15-stage key evolution to matter. All right, so first, you have the harmonic key generation. That was number 1. You call that, let's say, aspect A of a tachyon cycle. Harmonic key generation is 1, the Kilana spark pulse cycle. That's where you get the 144 sparks, right? That form the 12 keys. 2, you have the harmonic key formation, where the 144 sparks come together to form the bass tone, overtone keys. Then 3, you have the harmonic key resolution, which is the quantum resolution, where you end up with the 12 kasha keys and the 12 crystal keys, right? Now, we go into the next aspect, which is progression of the keys. Okay? This is where you get from 1 harmonic key cycle that generates 12 keys to 12 harmonic key cycles that generate altogether 144 keys that equal 1 tachyon cycle. Okay? So, number 4, out of after 1, 2, and 3, you have 4. That's called key ordination. That's where we had the adoration and the densification and the formation of the ores and the mata ors and the ja'orels and the 12 layers and 12 pulses, right? Next, after that, and these are all charts that I have to do, all these little tiny, very specific numbered work. So someday they're coming, but this will show you where that goes. All right, after key ordination, you have what's called key distillation. Okay, so you have the 12 ors that were from up there. Let's see, the 12 ors. Oh, la ors. Yeah, that's right. Okay, you had the ors here. So the ore, which were those sets of 3, the kasha and the bass tone and the overtone, that phase, the ores, all right, they transmute. And there's a whole process of drawings that one goes up, one goes down. These basically go up and outward. These stay at the kama level, and these stay at the mata level. All right. But what these form, when the ores transmute, they form the alors, the shalors, and the kalors. The alors are the mata ors. That means 12 ors, right, put together. Okay. They carry the ja'orels. Okay. There used to be the ja'orels, but 12 orels put together makes a urel, right? So the mata ors and the ja'orels, these are the things that form the matter crystals and their jewels. The shalors, remember we had the positive shema and the negative shama adore sparks coming into the crystal key. So this is the one that was connected with the crystal key, and it's on the kama band, that kama layer between ka and ma, and that forms what's called the kama kusha. All right, and Akusha has to do with numerical stuff. Eventually we get to Kama Sutra, right? The Kama Kusha, and yes, the Kama Sutra has to do with activating all of this and using the body in a way that facilitates that, or that's what it's supposed to be about anyway. So we have Shailors that are the Kama Kusha, and we have Kalars that are the Kale ores. Now, the Kale has to do with what we'll look at in a little bit is the outer layers, the more outer layers of the Partaki, and we'll see where these bands are. What's important about this is you can, first of all, we're going to talk about Alons, Shalons, and Kalons, which are what form from these later. We're going to be talking about those tomorrow in relation to the gender shields and those kind of thing, and understanding those, and also in relation to the Kama Sutra. So I just wanted you to see they come in at this stage. This is called key distillation, which is transmutation of the ores and redistribution of the spark quantum, basically, into the different states. From the fifth thing, key distillation, this is where the 12 lores were formed. So we went from, what do we have over here? We had ores to L-ores, lores, Shalars, Salars, Kalars. Then we have next, key crystallization. Okay? The 12 lons. This is where the lores, they used to be the ores become lores, become lons, all right, as they increase, and collect times 12. So in key crystallization, the Alors, Shalors, and Kalors, 12 layers of those merge to form Alons, Shalons, and Kalons, and the Alons are the ones that carry the Ja'arels, which 12 layers of those become the jewels. All right, and this is where we get the matter crystals with the jewels. The Alons matter crystal with the jewels. The Shalons are the Kama Siddha. The Kama Kushas become the Kama Siddha, which are the Siddha crystals, which are sound crystals, which are crystals, the whole vibration internally as opposed to oscillating externally. All right, they are the core of sound emanation. And the Kale are the light crystals, or the Kalons. When it comes to gates and spanners, it's a combination of activating these sets, shields made of these sets. Now this would be, say, one ore creates one set of these, and one set of those creates one set of these. So one ore was one key, right? So there's a whole set of Alons, Shalons, and Kalons by the time you get up to this level, and it would create what would be called an Alon shield, a Shalon shield, and a Kalon shield. All right, these are the core templates of matter shields that have to do with the elementals. Now, this, finally, we get up to what we visited before quickly, which was where the tachyon cycle happens, where the flash point after 12 harmonic key cycles, here's where key compression begins, and here is where these come down into the Ta layer. All right, so the key is in this form. Come down into the Ta layer to form the tachyon field, and at this point you have 12 sets of 12 keys. So you have tachyons forming. One tachyon is formed by a set of 12 keys. You have 12 tachyons, each with 12, it's 144 tachyons. That's 144 keys from one tachyon cycle. That's when it goes into flash point. The 144 keys replicate. Next what happened, or well, actually 8, is activation. That's when the tachyon flash point is reached, turns into a tachyon field. The whole thing disappears. Even the taran, or whatever the cluster is that the phasing is happening in, will disappear. And that's where the replication occurs, and it comes back, it rebirths, and it births out its times whatever replica. Next one, please. Oh, actually, not next one. Just pull this up. Yeah, next set. After that, after a flash point, then you have objectification of the keys, key fulfillment. This gets fascinating because here's where you got all these tachyon cycles going simultaneously, where you have one, remember, oration of tachyon cycle 1 keys occurred when tachyon cycle 2 keys were starting their sparking cycle, right? So it's going to take me ages to trace all of, like, okay, one's sparking, one's doing this, one's doing that. But the progression is, once keys go through tachyon cycle fulfillment, all right, the next thing is opalization. They call it opalization. Why, I don't know, but that's what it's called. And maybe because it creates what are called opaline fire crystals. These are the aurora fire crystals. Through the process of going through back into creation point, that original one, say we're talking about tachyon cycle 1 set of keys now, well, the Tarn, the tachyon keys all went in with the tachyon flashpoint. They came back out, the replica came back out and went this way and formed the dyad next expansion, but the original also rebirthed back out with it on its own axis. Now the keys that went through as tachyons, their quantum is replicated as well, and they become stored in through full compression, kind of like a birth by fire, of being in source and the high energy of source. When they come back out, when the rebirth of the Taran unit occurs, there are a set, what used to be the keys, are now a set of 12 aurora fire crystals. The aurora fire crystals have the bass tone levels, full bass tones and full overtones, which means the ettore and the adore ones. Now, not everybody carries all of these, as we talked about before, but in a full tachyon cycle, a full light body structure would be able to hold them, and you would have the adore, part of the adore and part of the ettore keys. And at the end of full set of 6 tachyon cycles, you would go and collect the rest of the adore keys on the counterclockwise spiral, and that's where you leap to your next time continuum and that kind of thing. But we went from key opalization, which is the first replica of the tachyon cycle 1 harmonic keys, emerges as a set of 12 aurora fire crystals in the partikey of cluster 1, which is the Tarn, right? So they merge in the center of the partikey. Now, this is called these are the inner elemental commands form from this procedure. I think I have one that I'm going to show in a little bit, not quite yet until I get done with these stages. Yeah, I will show you one. When these form, when these keys come out, they come out into the center of the partikey, and then break out into a set of 15 layers of orbitals inside the partikey. This has to do with the core of the elemental commands, where the 12 core elements are formed. And these are actually crystalline, opalized, like opal gemstones, units of consciousness. They're consciousness collectives. On larger scales, like for universes and stuff, they're massive consciousness collectives. But you even have them in your own body. So we have opalization that creates the inner, and it begins the creation of the 15 layers. The layers are interesting. We have the 15 layers of Gelesic states within the partikey, and we started to see through what the keys were doing when they orated, how between different layers, keys were starting to do different things and form crystals and build up quantum. Now, those spaces between the layers, there are 15 layers, and there are 15 spaces between. The 15 spaces between are called the orbital, or the orbitals. The orbitals are where these become, eventually they become what we see around electrons and those kind of things, and they are where the keys begin to go from Gelesic state to crystalline state to matter state. They become the 12 bands of matter, or the 12 states of matter, first within the partikey, but then after, as the sets of tachyon cycles progress, they become what are called orta clouds, where they outpicture, where they ionize with each new set of replication. They ionize and they begin to build the matter structure of the outer elemental kingdoms and the outer auric levels around whatever that light cell unit is. So it's a very complex process, but I wanted you to begin to understand that where keys apply to matter, they apply to matter in the fact that they go through tachyon cycle, then they go into opalization to form the first replica of the keys, which is the aurora fire crystals. Then they go into key ionization. This would be the second replica of the same set of harmonic keys, because remember, each one, the Tarn goes in every time one of the other units flashes, the whole thing pulls in the creation point. So the Tarn gets replicated most because it was there first. All right? Each set, the first replica keys will go in as the fire crystals. The second one key ionization starts, where the second replica of the keys ionize or break down and pump back out as a 15-layer, each layer being a different state, just like a reflection of the inner ones, right, inside the Parta key, of a 15-layer Oort cloud. Which is really funny is we have an Oort cloud that science has identified around, I believe, our galaxy. No, it's our solar system, isn't it? Solar system, I think. Yeah. Solar system, so, I guess we do have Oort clouds. But this is the beginning of where matter, where keys start to outpicture and become matter. So they ionize. The next thing after ionization of the keys is key condensation. Now, key condensation is, okay, the ionization here, here's some words that are interesting. The ionization, in the ionization process, that outpicturing the cloud coming outside of the Parta key, all right, the Oort elemental command, there are 1,728 particle waves called elementae that are released in that process. Okay? So the first, with ionization, first you have the core crystals inside. They're still inside the Parta key. The first outpicturing, you have a burst of the 1,728 elementae. Then we go into key condensation. The 1,728 outer elementae, particle waves, these are electromagnetic waves, right? All right, condense into 144 outer element atoms. 144 atoms, elements. All right, that's a periodic table with 144 natural elements on it. Then we have the key molecularization, which is the outer 144 elements, atoms, accrete and phase bond into 12 outer elementals, all right, or primary element molecules. All right. Then we have key materialization, where the 12 primary outer elementals, molecules, crystallize, accrete, and bond in various geometries to form the primary compounds and chemicals of which matter structure is built. So we've just taken it from light body to the core of how light body is created, where you see the key structure, the tachyon cycles, keys, and the lovely Rosetta, and all these things. And what they end up with is a progression of Gelesic radiation units stepping down and out into, first, into the inner creation, which is taking place inside the Parta keys. That's the part you don't see. And the part you do see are the outpicturings. There's more complex stuff that goes with that, too, that we don't have in yet, but I could see it just by trying to trace these cycles in one set of tachyon cycles. That's 6 tachyon cycles plus an Adashi and an Adashi cycle. To trace all of those movements for each set of those keys, that's an awful lot to follow. So it will take a long time for me to do those graphs. I didn't even try because I would have been not here till next year. So I hope that gives you enough idea of what the tachyon cycles do as far as key generation and what do those keys become. They become, first of all, these little fire crystals that on a small level in a small body, like our own bodies, we carry in our seed atoms. Now, we had original ones in our seed atoms for the outer. What we're going to be activating are the ones that go with the Shadi Edan seed atom, the middle seed atom, because that will begin the process of very rapid key. It will actually expedite the entire key generation cycle so we can get the Edonic keys activated in the bodies faster in order to head off the frequencies of the threshold that are coming through within the next, how long? 24 to 48 hours. They'll start tomorrow and they'll run on for about a day and a half. Okay, so that's the Metatronic activations that are coming in. So we're going to do the key activations, and we're going to activate some of the beginnings of the fire crystals or the elemental crystals. Now notice they gave different qualifications here too. You had the Oort cloud, and that was made by ionized, by the same quantum that would have been the keys. It was a replica quantum of the keys that are stored in fire crystal form, right? But it was a replica. You don't need another replica because you already have a set of the gems in there, right? The opalized crystals. So it ionizes out or breaks apart And that first breaking apart were the 1700 and 1700 wave spectra, 1728, sorry, wave spectra, which are the particle wave spectra, electromagnetic particle wave spectra, and these are the elementae consciousness. The elementae secrete to build up bigger, those electromagnetic waves form element atoms, the atoms of elements, all right? And the 1700 form 144. So we're going like 144 times 12 is 1728, right? So these are, before you had keys building, keys breaking down and doing different things inside the party-key. Now you have the smaller units, the elementae, outpicturing first, right? And that would be like the stardust or whatever science attributes to Big Bangness, probably. You would have that, and they condense into the atoms or the elements. Now, these are consciousness fields, too. These are people you can talk to, okay? Seriously. And they're people you're made out of. They're people just, they're a different form. They're in like, they're your, hi, I'm your hydrogen, that kind of stuff. Hi, I'm your oxygen. Hi, I'm your amino acids, that kind of thing. Okay, so we go from elementae to elements, 144, 1720 elementae, 144 elements, they're getting bigger, all right, to outer elementals, which there are 12 of, which are the 12 primary molecules. I don't know what they are yet, but eventually we will. All right? And these build up to form all of the components of life, basically, living matter. And I can't wait to find somewhere in here, we'll also find the answer that I've wondered a long time. What is the difference, since all matter is consciousness, right? What is the difference between what science calls living matter that's capable of its own chemical process and inanimate dead matter, things that are alive and things that aren't? Is it simply the fact that one is built on Metatronic keys that don't phase, or what? I don't know. So that question will be at the bottom of this somewhere once we get through what comes next. All right, next one, please. Yeah, please. Almost done. I think we got 2 more and an activation. Okay. Now, this is showing you, again, inside the party-key. All right, but you've got the inner layers, the inner 9 layers. Then you have layers 10, 11, and 12 that are still inside the party-key, but they're the outer layers of the inside. Then you have these layers, which are surrounding the party-key. Now notice, this gives you the imprint. These are the Jelezic states, right, that are inside the party-key and surrounding the party-key. They give you your base bands for matter. We had the layers, and in between the layers, we have the orbits. And the orbits are the places where the things that become matter units here form. Okay? So the layers are the spaces between the orbits that you don't see, and these would be the places where different bands of particles or particle waves occur through the process of key manufacture. Now, the 15 crystallization bands. Yeah, they call them the 15 crystallization bands or states of matter, orbits. These are the first 9 of the 12 orbitas, or orbits, that are inside. And they refer, the ones that would be inside would refer to what becomes what we see as light matter, or matter that you can see. All right? These become, when they do their Oort cloud, and this, when it does its Oort cloud, these become the layers of matter you can see, the 12 dimensions of matter you can see. These become the 13, 14, and 15 primal light field that you can't see, that actually carries with it the sound field. These are the dark light matter, or dark matter, that science thinks is there someplace that influences what happens with the light matter. So these are the bands, and these are the key bands. Remember, the different key functions took place through these bands to form keys and crystallizations at different states. This is how the matter bits form on the inside, and then when the second replication occurs, and they don't need another set to have the fire crystals inside, which are holding ground. Fire crystals are holding the proper configurations inside of the original key set. The outpicturing cloud will actually be structured in the same way too. So we have the matter bands on the outside and the inner matter bands on the inside that are held in place by the fire crystals. This gives you an idea of the beginning of elemental command, or the next stage in the beginning of elemental command. Understanding what is elemental command, because we're learning how to begin the process of commanding our elements, to begin the process of directing directly our Kundalini forces. And what does that mean? What is our Kundalini? What are our Kundalini? The 9 layers of the 9 bands of frequency that become frequency. They are particle waves that become frequency, even though they are formed and held in place by Jaleesic keys. Right? They become the inner ones become the Antankarana, first 9-dimensional currents of the Kundalini force, and then 10, 11, and 12 are the more outer ones. So the Kundalini, this is where you go into the higher ones, the Maharata currents, and then the Kirashe, and then later the Kundare sound currents. So we've talked about since Kathara level 1, I believe it was. So these are the beginnings of the currents. These are the Kundalini currents. It's where they start, and the Kundalini currents are the elemental currents that go through those stages of key progression from going into opalization and all the way up to materialization as the elements and atoms and compounds and chemicals and those kind of things. So there's a direct connection all the way through to your keys, your consciousness, God, and your Kundalini, and the chemicals that are running and coursing through your body, and the atoms and molecules you're made up of. We're beginning the process of learning how to control our atoms and molecules by understanding and beginning to work with elemental command. All right, next one, please. Do I need this one? This one might help me explain this better. I think I'm just going to go. I think I want to put the ones with the words. Yeah. All right. Now, in the bands, the orbital bands of the Pardiki, and also within the Oort clouds that form, they're divided into 3 levels. Here we had the layers of Jaleesic state, right? 1, 2, and 3. Between them is where the crystallization bands occur. And just like they come in groups of 3 as far as the layers, there are groups of 3 as far as the crystallization bands as well. So you have 1, 2, 3. Yeah. 1, 2. Wait, let me do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 different, what would be, layers out, or orbits coming out. Each of these groups of orbits is actually a group of 3 orbits, forms one group of the crystallization band layers. These have a name, and what are they called? They are called the 5 density commands. All right, the 5 density commands would refer to these 15 orbits, which are the dotted line ones, right, broken in to 5 groups of 3. All right. Now, I think I'm just going to take it onto the chart, because the chart's clear. See, these I'm working on, but I want to show you what it culminates into. Yes, that one. I want to try. Let me see if I need that one. Yeah, we'll do that later. Okay. What this is going to become, what you're seeing there as far as the bands, the 5 bands, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They would be those 5 groups of 3 in that circular one. All right. Now, the 12 elemental key commands, the commands, these are the molecular commands, they would correspond to the 12 lines, right? Remember you had that, it was a 12 clock that we were looking at. We could put that up here quick. I'll probably put a small one of these near it. Yeah, just to get an idea of the, yeah, that got to go your way, didn't it? I don't think I could hold it up there. So, whoops, wrong way. I'm tired too. We need them both kind of near each other just for a moment. Ending up. I'll just explain this. These are the lines, the 12 lines. Each one of those would have a crystal, 12-layer crystal that would refer to an elemental command. Okay, so there are 12 commands. Okay, they are the key commands. Now put the next one back on again. The next one back on again, please. Yeah, I need the chart basically, but I just wanted to show where they were. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. All right, so they're the 12 elemental key commands, or those big circles at the end of those lines. Each one of those has a set of 12 elements or commands. All right, so you have 12 elementals times 12 ors each is 144 elements. The elements are the ors. All right, these are the atomic commands. They are broken into 4 groups as far as these go. There's one that's called the Ruta command. It's the command of the ethers, or the eters. Okay, it is known as the Elementi sound command. We have 2, the Elementi light command, or the Urta command, the command of solids. It's the earth or eartha command. You have elemental command 3. This would be referring to density 1, density 2. Now we're on density 3 because these refer to the densities, the density commands. Hold on a second. 3, we have the wata or command, or the water command, right? Is the command of liquids, the lakawada, all right? Liquids, the water command. So we have ethers, earth, water. Next is elemente. 4 is the gasa command, or gases, the air command, or the gases. Now, when we go up here, you notice each of the 12 elemental key commands, or the commands, they're those little balls, one ball at the end of each of those 12 lines, right? They also create one set of 3 what are called aria. An aria, each one of these is called an aura. So you have an aura, 1, 2, and 3. 3 auras make an aria. So these are the aria commands. That would be the density 5 commands. These are known as the fire commands. All right, together you have 36 of the fire commands altogether. These are considered the vapors. All right, so you have the ethers, solids, liquids, gases, vapors, and that goes ethers or ethers, earth, water, air, and fire command. And that's the natural command of the elements. When you get into the little chants like certain groups like to use, like earth, air, fire, water, earth, air, fire, water, right? Any of those, you're calling on stuff, but you're calling on it in the wrong order. Guess what that might activate? Right? Metatronic crystals. Yes, where when you work with these, you are working with the core true structure of Christic elemental command. And even though our outer elements are mutated half to death at this point, fortunately we have the edons and we have the Shadi seed atom activating, so we can bring those natural elemental currents up into our bodies on the outer domains and begin to heal the core of the seed atom, and that will heal the Rishote currents faster and all of that. So eventually these will all be filled in, and what's going to be fascinating is seeing, we will get their actual numbers will have to do with the number of particle they carry, and that will affect the number of protons, and thus electrons, they carry, which will be their atomic number. We'll be able to compare them to what is known and visible on the atomic table of elements now. We'll be able to see which ones are normal and which ones aren't, if any of them are normal at this point, as far as what the elemental structure on this planet is right now. So it's going to be exciting, but in the meantime, we're going to begin to call on the first 5 states. Elemental command that we are all aiming for are the Aurora commands. Okay, 12 Aurea equal 1 Aurora. The Aurora commands are the ones that combine the Ettore and the Adore. So we are striving to work through the commands. We won't all be able to do every one of them. But if the Indigo Shield can fill this out enough, we will be able to activate the Aurora commands, which are what are required to activate the spanner gates, which are also what are required to get our own systems capable of going through a spanner gate. So it's going to be a process, but it's a fascinating process. They wanted you to get tonight to where you could understand a bit about what are we talking about when we're talking about elemental command. Where does it come from? And if we didn't understand the parts of the key progressions that take the keys into objectification, literally into matter, where now you can see where sparks start as sparks and they go all the way down into matter. Right? So a particle makes sparks and that goes all the way down through those progressions right into the matter that we're made of. And this is the beginning of understanding elemental command and working with it directly. Now, we got through a lot tonight, I think, or this morning, or tomorrow that it is already, whatever it is. We're going to do, they have one activation. It's not long. It's a series of tones, and this is just one series of tones because there are many series of tones that go with activating what's not there anymore. Activating, thank you, Dawn. That go with activating these. We're going to start with the density commands, and they're going to begin the tones for the ethers, earth, water, air, fire sequence. Okay, so we'll start with those, and this gets really complex when how many who's have how many who's and who's in charge of what. So Urs are the big ones and they're elementals. Not that much. They each have 12 ores. Kind of thing. 12 ores and 3 areas. One area and 3 auras, right? See, these are all new words. This is a lot of information to process, but I hope this has given you enough understanding. So when we begin tonight, or this morning, whenever it is, we will do the few tones that will begin the process of activating in our own bodies, in our Shadi Siddhatam, the middle domain level of the Aurora keys, probably from, I don't know what tachyon cycle they're going to go for, just 1, or if they're going to take us all the way up through 5, because we're on rebirth of the 6th level at this point on this. So we're going 1 through, oh, okay, thank you. 1 through 6. I was just informed. The core, in the party keys, Aurora, fire, crystals, whatever ones we have at the moment. Because we all don't, none of us have all of the whole sets of the Aurora fire crystals, but we each have a bit of them. We're going to begin the tonal activations of those, so we will be ready by tomorrow evening to, for those of us who want to, receive the frequencies that the beloveds are going to run directly into the Indigo Shield in order to activate as many of the full sets of Aurora crystals that we have in order to build up enough frequency in our Rushate to not have it grabbed by the threshold activation that is coming and barreling on through the grids. So we will be able to make it through to the Axis 7 rebirth of the Edon, so we can continue with our tachyon cycles and key generation without getting hijacked in this first 666 alignment that is occurring now and will run with us through until we hit Axis 7. It's meant to take us before we get to Axis 7 in the Starburn cycle. So the important part about getting these elementals, beginning the wake-up process of our Eden elementals, is that we will be able to generate enough elemental currents in our body and link to our Eden currents so we don't literally get the rest of our currents reversed into threshold, but it's also an acceleration of our own growth process in general as far as getting closer to the ability to walk biologically through a gate. So that's what it's going to be about. I'm going to sit down for 2 seconds, and it's short. The toning thing is short, they're telling me. I need to do a ladies' room run. So I don't know how many people need to. They said it's about 10 to 15 minutes tops, could go as short as 5, depending on the current they're riding it on. And that has to do with something that's running with the magnetotail on the planet at the moment. So they're suggesting like just a 5-minute break for those who have to go, instead of like a wave out the door where everybody disappears. If you need to go, go. If you need to stretch your legs, do that. I'm going to go take a 5, and then we'll come back and run the tones, and then we can go to bed. Okay?